Yeah, so good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Retired Living True series, and Happy New Year for those who I haven't said that to personally. It's great to be starting off a new year. And today's topic is the truth about alternative medicine. And I have some fantastic panelists who will be joining me shortly. But before we get to that, there's just a few housekeeping items I wanted to go over. If I didn't already say it, my name's Brett Janelle. I'm your host today. This is kind of weird having such a big room to kind of go backwards and forwards, side to side. It'll take some getting used to again. Just curious, show of hands, those who are here for the first time. This is their first Retired Living True series seminar. Oh, welcome, quite a number of people. So thank you for being here. So given we have a number of new people, let me just kind of explain the format so you know what's going on. We'll finish today at around 3 o'clock. No. What we've done is we always prepare questions for the panelists. A group of us come up with some really good questions, we believe, and I'm going to ask our panelists those on your behalf. And so we'll do that from 10 to roughly 11 o'clock. And then at 11 o'clock, we'll open it up for your questions. You can ask the panelists whatever questions you might have. And we'll have you out of here no later than 11:30, depending on how many questions there are. If we don't have any questions, we'll be done earlier. But usually there's plenty of questions. Did everybody get a binder as they came in the door? Did everyone get a binder? Yeah, excellent. And did the staff help you update your binders, put in a new cover front sheet and a new insert? So if you didn't, because there was a lot of people coming in the door, if you didn't get your binder updated for 2022, just see one of the team on your way out and they'll happily do that for you. So there's a new front page with our current education partners on it, a new insert with education partners, and then there's a sleeve of business cards of all of the education partners here. And a big thank you to our education partners who helped make that all happen this morning. So thank you. Without them, we wouldn't be here. Yeah. So quick quiz. How many education partners do we have for 2022? Quick. It's on your binder cover. How many partners are there? It's on the slide. 14. Is that the right answer? Who said 14? I heard somewhere over here. I have a gift card for you. Thank you for participating. Oh, excellent. Yeah, so we have 14 wonderful education partners for this year. Who has a cell phone? Does anyone have a cell phone? Could you please take your cell phones out and make sure they're silenced? Because I keep getting every month people saying, can you do something about all the cell phones that keep going off? So if we could just make sure our cell phones are off, that'd be great. And I did make sure mine's off. Because that's really embarrassing when I say that and then my cell phone goes off. So yeah, never turned it on, even better. We talked about gratitude. So I think I'd like to jump in and invite our panelists to come up and join me. Leslie, if you could come and join me. So we had two panelists this morning. You notice I only asked one panelist to come up. My other panelist, Dr. Chen. Who remembers Dr. Chen from maybe 2 years ago? Yeah, we have Dr. Chen was planning to be here with us today. Thank you, Leslie. Guess what happened yesterday or the day before when I spoke to Dr. Chen? He has COVID. Yes, the doctor has COVID. There's always a challenge. So Dr. Chen is actually going to join us via Zoom. So he's at home quarantining and he's going to join us. If we can get our technology working.
Hello.
Ready? Yeah, if you want to just. Yeah, and then just.
Let's see.
Bear with us one moment. He's probably just turning on his video. Yeah, so
hello.
there's Dr. Chen. So
all right, hello.
Dr. Chen with us today. So Leslie, can I start with you? Could you just introduce yourself, tell the audience why you're here today and a little bit about you?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me? I tend to be a little bit too loud sometimes, so I don't hear well either. So so my name is Leslie Baker. I am a geriatric pharmacist at the Sanford Center for Aging. I am the director of geriatric pharmacy services. I am also the director of the community-based medication therapy management program. So I do medication reviews for folks. Is that okay? Okay. So my interest in alternative medicine, I have to admit that I wasn't really, I definitely had no education from it when I was in pharmacy school, and I had people keep bringing in all this stuff and asking me questions about it. And I finally realized I probably need to learn something about this. So I started to look for a program for integrative and complementary medicine that was really more focused towards pharmacy and medications. And they were few and far between. I eventually found one through the University of Colorado School of Pharmacy, did a year-long certificate in integrative and complementary medication or in therapy. So it kind of looked at the whole gamut, but we really focused a lot on herbals and dietary supplements and those kinds of things and how they relate with what we consider mainstream pharmaceuticals. So that's my background.
Great. Thank you, Leslie, and welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Dr. Chen.
Hello, can everybody hear me okay?
A little bit louder, Dr. Chen, if you can.
Okay, how about this? That's about as loud as I'm going to get. Unfortunately, I have to say that I have COVID, so my throat isn't exactly the best, so being loud might not work. Otherwise, I might start coughing, so I apologize for that. Any way you can turn me up, Brett?
Let me think.
Yeah.
Is there any way you can get closer? No, you're as close as you can.
I'm as close as I can to the microphone, actually.
Annette, could you run out and get Katie and see if there's a way we can increase Dr. Chen's volume? Thank you. So we're going to work on that. So if you can just talk really loud, Dr. Chen, until we can address that.
All right, sure. I'll see what I can do. And so again, I'm Dr. Howard Chen, and I run the Chen Center, which is we call it the Chen Center for Integrative Medicine. And it means that I try to combine Western medicine as well as Chinese medicine and Western herbs. And I have a small primary care practice here in Reno, and I see patients to try to give them all the options. I also like to do Chinese medicine, as I've already said, and I spend a lot of time doing acupuncture, and just about each one of my patients gets acupuncture. What else should I tell you? I'm a board certified primary care doctor. I worked for Renown for 10 years, so you may have seen me there. And other than that, I'm very excited to see all of you here. And I'm sorry, today I have COVID. In fact, I came down with COVID on Monday and have been isolating at home. So you see the inside of my bedroom right now, at least one part of it. So.
Thank you,
All
Dr.
right.
Chen. I'm
Sure.
glad you're not in bed. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
That'd be a
still just
different.
working on the volume. I know it's a little
Yeah.
bit of a challenge to hear. So everyone having a little bit of a challenge hearing Dr. Chen. Were you able to find? Oh, we have some help. So we'll just wait a moment so we don't miss out on anything Dr. Chen or Leslie have to say. We'll just see if we can increase the volume a little bit, and maybe Leslie and I will talk a little quieter if need be. We'll adjust. So Dr. Chen, if you could speak again, see if it's louder now.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I'll just tell you a little bit about the rest of my life, I guess. Right now, I've just been, and I'm just talking so you guys can hear my voice. So right now, I'm taking the time to study some more Chinese medicine because I really think it's one of the most interesting things. Lately, I've been lecturing to medical students at the university, talking to them about integrative therapies. And so despite the fact that we've got plenty of doctors out there who are not able to really take advantage of complementary and alternative therapies, at least I hope I'm doing my part to improve the education of our medical students. So that's something we love to do.
Fantastic.
How's that so
Thank
far?
you, Dr. Chen. Yeah, we're much better on volume. Are we good on volume?
Okay,
now?
great.
Yeah, now I'm probably too loud, or am I still okay? Still okay? Excellent, fantastic, thank you. So I'm just curious, just by a show of hands, who has or is using some form of alternative medicine of some sort? Oh, a good number of people. Okay, interesting. So you already know all about this, huh? I guess I'll be the one learning today. So yeah, quite a few hands. Well, thank you. So I wanted to start there actually, and if I could start with you, Leslie, just from your perspective, what is alternative medicine?
I think alternative medicine really is anything that doesn't fit into what we consider mainstream medicine. I mean, it's really a broad category, which I learned that there is a whole host of different therapies that are utilized all across the world. And I really think in the United States, we're kind of behind the times, when we really look at how many thousands of years that other cultures have been using what we consider alternative medicine.
Thank you. What about you, Dr. Chen? How
Yeah,
would you
so-
define alternative medicine from your perspective? Because you obviously both have unique perspectives.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, very similar to what Leslie said. I think that alternative medicine is anything that can be used in conjunction with Western medicine. I don't really love the term alternative because it makes one think that we can do that other thing instead of. But I find that the best use of medicine is to combine. And so rather than just do something like Chinese medicine and rely solely on that to improve your health, I think it's important to combine or use it in a complementary fashion.
Excellent. So you both touched on how alternative medicine, for lack of a better word, has been around a long time in other cultures, other parts of the world, but not here. So what are some of the reasons, perhaps, why that's not the case here, if it's not already obvious? Maybe you, Leslie?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is that it's not taught in our professional education, whether it be nursing or pharmacy or, medical school. It is just really not something that is taught in most educational settings. And I think that's really a big part. I mean, you aren't going to participate in something that you don't know anything about. So it really is, I think, just a lack of education in our medical providers and an understanding of really what it is. And I think Dr. Chen, what he had just mentioned, that the using the term alternative is kind of a misnomer, because we really want to use it in conjunction with everything else. And I think that's part of where the fear comes. It's like, oh, if we're going to do this, then we're just abandoning all the rest of it that we have information about. And that's really not true.
So what was a better word for it than alternative?
Complementary.
Oh, complementary is the word, yeah. So complementary medicine. So Dr. Chen, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in medicine, in Western medicine, we spend a lot of time trying to just get our hands around the process of disease. We call it the pathology or the pathophysiology. We try to understand it from one perspective, and it's already overwhelming enough. As an example, we can just think of, how difficult it has been to wrap our arms and wrap our minds around COVID. And so sometimes I feel that Western medicine has its hands full and is looking at things in a specific perspective, and it doesn't really know how to get out of that perspective. The difficulty with complementary and alternative therapies is that there's so many different philosophies, many of which are very valid, but also quite different than Western medicine. And so because of that, it's almost just too much for us to learn as human beings. How much time do you actually have? As an example, medical school is 4 years, and then you've got residency, which is somewhere between 3 and 7 years, and then you've got fellowship, which can be another 3 years after that. And so really the question is, how much time do you have to learn as a human being on this planet? And so I think that's somewhat of the difficulty. It's just that there's way too much to learn. And it doesn't mean that one viewpoint on health is more valid than the other. It just means that we almost had to choose one and stick with it. And unfortunately, we got Western medicine, which isn't all that bad, comes in handy. But unfortunately, it's very siloed, we'd like to say, or it's only on one path. So that's it.
So we just need to add another 10 years to studies for our doctors, and we'll be good.
Exactly.
I'm sure they'd be thrilled. So education is part of it, not having enough time. Is there also maybe a undertone or influences in terms of large, like pharmaceuticals, others who have an incentive to not want to have alternative medicine that I'm just trying to think of some examples. There's certain things that we could take that would help us, but there's no money in it for a pharmaceutical company. So obviously they're not going to be lobbying to bring in something that they're not going to make money out of. But if they have something that they're going to make a lot of money out, obviously they're going to be pushing for that. Is that part of it here, just because of our culture and the West?
I would definitely say that's part of it. I mean, it's, we are inundated with advertisements on TV about all the new drugs that are out there, ask for this, ask for that. And I think that's very true. There's no money if you're, doing something that's very inexpensive. And part of that, I think, is why we have such a lack of research for it, is that there is no money at the end of that research study that you're going to show that, X, Y, and Z is beneficial, but nobody's going to fund that because there's, no financial incentive in the long run for it. So I definitely think that is a big part of it.
And I guess the same would be for teaching too, the way that's funded and have come about, and people obviously make money from teaching. To try to change it overnight would be a huge undertaking. Yeah,
and I think from the teaching perspective, as Dr. Chen said, there's only so much time. I mean, I have pharmacy students that spend 6 weeks with me to learn about geriatrics and older adults, and it is, there's a lot to cram in there in 6 weeks. So, trying to get other things in there is a challenge, and we definitely try because they are exposed to that when they get out into the real world. But it's a challenge for sure.
Dr. Chen, what would you add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Very similar to what Leslie was talking about. The difficulty is that some of the things just cannot be patented. And so the use of chamomile, as an example, many people are familiar with using chamomile tea for helping with an upset or unsettled stomach. Can you actually patent chamomile? No, you can't, right? So because of that, there's, again, just like you guys said, there's no money in it, unfortunately. The other thing I think that's important to understand about the adoption of complementary and alternative therapies is that we spend a lot of time in Western medicine learning how to do specific things, right? So we learn how to do different orthopedic procedures such as knee replacements and hip replacements. And then later on, we get research that says, well, maybe those aren't entirely necessary, and maybe we can get enough benefit from doing all the other things, such as improving your diet and losing weight and taking the right supplements and doing physical therapy. And very similarly, we also learn a whole lot of surgical procedures such as cardiac catheterization, which is where they try to open up the blood vessels in the heart. And we find that it makes a difference in the short run, but we find that at the end of the day, over a long run, over 6 months or 10 or over a year, it doesn't really make much of a difference at all. And so you have providers who are trained to do all kinds of things, which turn out to be not as beneficial as we expected, but yet they've still invested thousands of hours into learning these things. And so in some ways, they'll keep doing it because that's what we do. We like to do what we know how to do, rather than admit that we don't know how to do things that have better evidence, I guess you could say.
So it sounds a lot like we're good at fixing the problem, but not necessarily addressing what the issue is. Because the idea of having to exercise and have a healthy diet, that sounds like hard work versus going in for surgery or popping a pill or whatever it might be. So maybe part of it is a little bit maybe being lazy, not doing the simpler things that would save us from what you just said, Dr. Chan, having to end up having surgery of some sort. Okay. And are there any other things, any other undertones that are preventing? Well, actually, let me go back one. So we're not saying Western medicine we shouldn't be looking at. Obviously, there's times where we have to have surgery, but what we are saying, there's other alternatives that might prevent us from getting there, or that might help us more than perhaps some of the things that we would call traditional.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And again, it's back to the complementary that we need to utilize both forms of healthcare. And I think, a great example of that is like diabetes. I mean, there's a lot that we can do to help decrease the amount of medications, decrease insulin, decrease, what we're having to take if we kind of take the hard road and work on diet and exercise. And so I think it's just important that keep in mind that it may not fix everything, but it's certainly going to help. And I think that's, really something to keep in mind there.
Excellent. And are we all really clear now what the alternatives and what the different complementary medicines are? Is it really clear? No, it's not to me either. So I think we should go back to there if we can, Leslie and Dr. Chan. What are some of the complementary or alternatives that people may have heard of that maybe we can kind of go through a list and what they are in general, in short? What would be some of the ones that you would?
So ones that I really fall back on, of course, are dietary supplements, herbal products, massage therapy, physical therapy, meditation, aromatherapy. Those are really the big ones that I am, try and encourage people to explore rather than doing a pharmaceutical.
And actually in your handouts, we put in a diagram from the National Institute of Health that actually shows some of the different complementary types of medicine. So you might want to just make some notes there, ones that Leslie might have just mentioned that maybe aren't on the list, and similarly with Dr. Chen. Dr. Chen, what would you like to add? What are some other ones we can add to our list?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think it might be useful to also further divide the therapies up into the things you do to yourself and the things that you ask other people to do to you. So as an example, the things that you do to yourself would include lifestyle changes. So eating differently, maybe a little bit more plant-based, getting more exercise, getting more rest, and doing things such as meditation and learning how to de-stress. I think all those things are things that you do to yourself. And of course, in addition to taking different supplements, such as whether they're pharmaceuticals or herbs or vitamins or minerals. And then there's this whole other category of things that are done to you. You ask other people to do massage to you. You ask other people to perform energy healing on you, such as Reiki. You ask other people to do manipulation of your body, such as with chiropractic or osteopathy or massage or Rolfing. And then, or even other things such as traditional Chinese medicine, such as acupuncture, or Chinese herbs, and then maybe even Ayurveda, which is traditional, in some ways, Indian medicine. So there's lots of different ways to go about it, but I like to kind of divide it between the things that you do to yourself and the things that you ask people to do to you.
Thank you. So you just mentioned terms I'm not familiar with, and I'm sure a lot of the audience aren't, or maybe you are. Just briefly, what is osteotherapy, and then what was Rolfing? And there was a third one that I just briefly, what are they?
No problem, no problem. So in terms of body
Reiki.
manipulation, yeah, Reiki. So, but in terms of body manipulation, there's several different types of body manipulation, right? Many of us are familiar with chiropractic, and the philosophy there is to kind of move the bones around to cause benefits to health, whether it's back pain or something else. Similar but slightly different to that is osteopathy, which is a type of body manipulation that's generally practiced in the United States by physicians, doctors of osteopathy in this particular case. They're fully board certified physicians as well. There's energetic therapies. Reiki, R-E-I-K-I, is one of them. Another type of energetic therapy is, let's say, healing touch. And these are generally types of therapies that either barely touch you or don't touch you at all. And you're just kind of relying on the transmission of energy between the provider or the therapist and yourself. And then, to continue with the body manipulation, Rolfing is like that as well. I don't think we have any Rolfers in town, R-O-L-F-I-N-G, Rolfing, but they're a little bit more focused on kind of even more focused on body manipulation. And then I think I mentioned Ayurveda again, which is a type of traditional Indian medicine.
Yeah, I didn't repeat that one because I couldn't pronounce it. So whatever you said.
No problem.
One more time, Ayurveda?
Yeah, it's A-Y-U-R-V-E-D-A, Ayurveda. So, and it
that is
A-Y-U-R-V-E-D-A.
Thank you.
No problem. There's not many practitioners, but there are a few in town. And they also do a lot of herbs as well.
Thank you, Dr. Chen. And so you were also talking about the different areas, what we can do, what's done to us. Did I hear either of you mention acupuncture in there?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I always mention acupuncture. I like it.
Yeah, you like it. So for those of us who don't know, how could that help us, acupuncture? I get the idea of sticking needles in myself, or you stick needles in me.
Yeah, it's probably
What are some
better that
examples of where that could help.
it's probably better that the practitioner sticks needles in you rather than you sticking needles in yourself. It just doesn't go so well. But
Thank you.
so it's acupuncture is a style, or it's a branch of traditional Chinese medicine. And acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine were primary care for all of Asia for over 2,000 years. So, I mean, it has a very long history behind it. These days, I find it to be very useful for things such as headaches, allergies, as well as various aches and pains.
Thank you. So of these other complementary medicines, what other benefits? How else can they help us as we age? What are some other examples? You mentioned meditation, and how might that help me?
Yeah, so a big part of, I think, our society today is it's stressful no matter what your age is. And it's even more stressful now with COVID, and depression rates are sky high. And there is a lot of data showing that meditation, breathing, all of these things can help reduce stress. And that, is something that you can practice very simply at home. Maybe you're in a traffic jam and you're ticked off, do it at that point, rather than screaming at the cars in front of you that can't hear you anyway. There's lots of different things that we can do. And I think one of the things that we really is underdiagnosed in our older adults is depression. And so, learning these techniques that can help with anxiety and depression, is a great alternative to start with before we try adding a medication on. As you all know, every medication has side effects and unintended consequences from them. So if we can do something that's going to be beneficial and not have to add on a medication, that's, certainly preferred. So I think, and even just talking about dietary changes and stretching and all of those things have benefits, not just for the one thing that you're trying to work on. And, physical activity is a great example of that. Is it's not only helping your heart, but it's helping your brain. We know endorphins get released, so you can, are feeling better. You lose some weight, so that's helping your joints. I mean, there's all kinds of just with regular prescription medications, you have the unintended consequences maybe from some of these alternative therapies or complementary therapies that are beneficial.
Thank you. So Dr. Chen, you also mentioned several complementary therapies. So what are some of the benefits of those that people can relate to? Why I might want to seek that out? What is an ailment I might have where they could help?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to remember that these complementary and alternative therapies, they don't just affect one thing, they affect multiple things. And so as an example, if Leslie is talking about meditation as an example, not only can it be useful for decreasing one's response to the environment, so decreasing stress, decreasing anxiety, decreasing depression, but it could also be beneficial for improving your mood, getting better clarity of who you are and what you want in your life. And even more important from my perspective is meditation's ability to decrease the risk for dementia. And I know that's something that we're all very interested in as we get older. And so what's very interesting about meditation is that other than exercise and eating well, it's about the only therapy out there that can actually improve the connections of the brain. And so sounds wonderful for decreasing the risk of dementia. And I guess the other thing that we should say is that from my perspective, it's very, very important to have alternatives or options of therapy, because as one gets older, one's body is not quite as, you can't do the same thing that you used to do, right? So when you're in your 20s, you could probably drink alcohol all night and still get up for work the next day. These days, you probably can't do that. And it just means that the body changes over time, and it's important to have options that you can rely on as your body continues to change. And so you may not be able to take the same dose of medication that you could in the past because your body is changing. And so thus, you may need to rely on different alternative or complementary therapies. So I hope that answers your question, Brett.
That does, thank you. And then would you have any specific examples of patients that you've been able to help using different complementary medicine that, you know, again, the audience could relate to? You know, patients who have dealt with, maybe tried Western and it hasn't worked, and you know, they've come to see you. What would be some examples where you've been able to, you know, provide?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, unfortunately for my practice, and the practice of many other complementary and alternative therapists, we find that people come to see us a little bit late. And so by the time people have gotten to us, it's because their doctor said, well, I've got nothing else for you. You might as well go see the acupuncturist or the Ayurvedist or the chiropractor or the naturopath or the energy healer, whatever it is. And so just in general, we found benefit with Chinese medicine and acupuncture with such things as peripheral neuropathy, headaches, different aches and pains of the hip or the knee or the back. And we certainly found benefits for allergies, asthma, pretty much just about everything one would see in a primary care office, actually. So I find quite a lot of benefit, which is why I'm still doing it. And maybe it's also because I like sticking needles in patients, but I shouldn't say that.
You're always looking for volunteer subjects?
Yes, I am.
So why are you kind of like, why is alternative or complementary like a last resort? You said the primary care physician, you know, or the other specialists have tried everything else, and then they kind of give up and refer to, you know, go try the list that you just suggested. And why is that?
You know, I think it's because Western medicine, it likes to try all the things. It likes to try all the different things. It likes to try to help people the way that it knows how to. And I think finally when Western medicine gives up and says, well, I got nothing else for you, they say, maybe try somebody else. I don't know anything about those other people, but maybe it could be useful. So I love the fact that Western medicine says that it's not the end all be all, but I also feel badly because, well, people shouldn't have to wait that long to get the care from complementary and alternative therapy.
Exactly. And then so we were talking about dosages as we age of different pharmaceuticals that we might be utilizing. So I assume you would see that over time as people age, maybe being on too a higher dose or not high enough a dose. Can you kind of tell us a bit more how aging impacts perhaps the doses that we?
Yeah. So as you get older, your kidneys may not function quite as well as they did. Your liver isn't functioning as well. What our body is made up of is changes. So we get more fat, less water. All of these things can affect the dosages of medications. And not only that, it's not just the dosages, but it's how we maybe get rid of them out of the body, how we metabolize them. We're taking more and of other drugs because we might have more chronic health conditions that we're having to treat. And then there's several medications that are just flat considered high risk medications in older adults because of typically its side effects, risks for falls and cognitive impairment. And the one thing that I really want to point out about the herbal products and dietary supplements is they're active compounds, right? I mean, that's why we're taking them, is because we're hoping that they're going to do something beneficial for us. But keep in mind that it is an active compound. So we need to make sure that we're looking at, you know, is what's in there really what we think is in there? And then is that going to interfere with other medications that we are taking, or maybe, you know, a disease that we may have? So it's, you know, I think the thought is sometimes that, well, it's over the counter, so it's harmless and I don't really need to worry about it. But that just doesn't make sense if you're using the fundamental concept that it's an active compound and we want it to do a beneficial thing for me, well, then it's, may have some not so beneficial things when we're looking at, us as a whole person and the whole body. So I think that's really important to keep in mind.
Yeah, no, thank you. And do you have any examples? So Sanford Center for Aging has the medication therapy management program, if I'm saying that correctly?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, so when you review what people are on, including vitamins, are there examples you can come up with where people haven't realized the impact of what they are, some specific ones?
Yeah, I think, there's quite a few. A big one that comes to mind is St. John's wort that people take for depression. There is good data that it works, but the problem is you got to make sure that you're really getting what you think you're getting in that. But it interferes with a lot of different enzyme systems or how we break other drugs down in the body. So we just want to make sure that we're aware of those interactions. And another big one are supplements that increase the risks of bleeding. So if you're taking a blood thinner, maybe because you have a fib, we want to make sure that we're addressing that and that we're not creating an increased risk of having a gastrointestinal bleed there. If anybody's had surgery, they will typically give you a long list of dietary supplements to stop because they do increase the risk of bleeding. So, that goes along with drug interactions. There's just, it's an active compound. So it's going to make changes or, create changes, hopefully.
Thank you, Leslie. And for those who don't know, can you just touch on a little bit more about what the medication therapy management program is at Sanford?
Yeah, so the medication therapy management program at Sanford Center for Aging is a free program to anybody 60 and older. And I review all of your prescription medications. If you have lab work, I always like to ask for that. I review dietary supplements, herbal products, look to make sure that, especially the prescription medications is there a side effect maybe you're experiencing that could be due to a medication? Are we taking duplicates maybe that we don't need? Blood pressure medicines are always a big one. We're very focused on controlling high blood pressure, but sometimes you get blood pressure so low that people are getting dizzy when they're standing up and then they're falling. And now we're creating a whole nother host of problems. So I really try and review everything that everybody's taking, but also getting, people's perspective on their health and telling somebody that they should check their blood sugar 4 times a day and they're not going to do it. There's no reason to do that. It's got to be what somebody is willing to do and how they perceive the benefits from that. So it's really education is my biggest thing that I think I can provide people, and to allow you to be your own advocate for healthcare, because if you're not your own advocate, nobody's going to do it for you. So I think education is the key to that. You can never have too much knowledge. And it's okay to ask your provider, I learned this and I'm concerned about this. Is that okay? Or can we make some changes? So it's education is the key, I think, for a lot of people.
Fantastic. And in your handout on the second page, there's information or a link and a phone number for the School of Medicine Medication Therapy Management Program. You should see a website there and a phone number if that's of help to someone who's shaking their head no. Yes. The phone number is incomplete. I take responsibility because I put that handout together. So do you happen to know of that offhand, the phone number?
I don't. Gary, help me.
So we have flyers out front. If you see Gary, if everyone can turn and look at Gary, if you can wave your hand. If you see Gary on the way out, or Leslie will get you the correct phone number. So my apologies. We'll take questions just shortly. Oh, you know the number. We're missing a 2 on the end.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. A 2 on the end. I left off the 2. And this program, if I or someone I know could benefit from it, the cost?
It's free.
We like that.
Yes,
expression.
we are.
Yeah.
We are supported by a couple of different grants. So it's a completely free program.
Thank you, Leslie.
Uh-huh.
So, Dr. Chen, if you're still with us. Oh, yeah,
Still
I
here.
can see you on the screen. Thank you. So is this way more expensive looking at complementary medicine? If I was to want to explore, is it going to cost me way more, way less, the same? Just any information on that you could help us with?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, before I get into that, I just wanted to second what Dr. Leslie Baker was talking about. I think it's really important to get good help with medication management above and beyond what your physician is doing for you, because things change quite often for medications. And many physicians or other healthcare providers may not have time to take a look at kind of exactly the dosing of medications and things like that. So I have a 99-year-old patient that I've recently had to take off of several blood pressure medications. And so it's one of those things that are very important to keep a watch of. So I really love the Sanford Center's services. So thank you for offering those, Dr. Baker. Anyway, and to answer your question, Brett, I think the question of whether or not complementary and alternative therapies are more expensive, yes, there is an additional cost. Yes, it may be that your insurance company will not pay for them. But I think that on the other hand, their goal, like I said, is to work on all facets of your life. So such as your emotions, such as kind of your general health. And I think that working on incorporating complementary and alternative therapies into your life can certainly be cost saving in the future. So as an example, some of the things that we even do, some of the most important things in complementary and alternative therapies actually cost nothing, right? So we're used to saying, okay, we should get some exercise, but exercise actually doesn't have to cost much. You don't actually need to go to a Pilates class or to a yoga class or a spin class. You don't even need a gym membership. Truthfully, I just want you to do some walking every day on a daily basis. And then eating better, maybe it doesn't cost too much. I mean, maybe organic foods, as an example, may be a little bit more expensive, but on the other hand, you'll be improving your health from so many other aspects that I think that you'll be saving money in the long run. Because truthfully, if you're eating better and you're getting more exercise, which don't sound like complementary and alternative therapies, but they really are, if you're doing those things, the likelihood that you can decrease or even get off of some of your medications, especially those expensive medications, is certainly possible. So there may be a cost if you're going to do things like Ayurveda or acupuncture or massage therapy, but there's plenty of complementary and alternative therapies that cost nothing. And in either case, all of them can help not just the thing you're working on, but it can help many aspects of your life. That's it.
So part of it's just quality of life, having more energy, being more vibrant, sleeping better. So maybe it costs us a little bit more, but we're better as a person as a result of that. So it sounds like kind of a false economy. I can pay for medications and surgery and so forth and try to cheat the system, or I can perhaps take care of myself better and look at other complementary ways of doing so. Excellent. Did you have anything you wanted to add in terms of cost?
I think it's kind of interesting because you get that copay for that vial of insulin and it's $100 and you think, holy cow, this is such a huge copay. But then yes, buying fresh fruits and vegetables are more expensive. But really in the long run, if you could get off of that insulin and not have that cost, and that goes with, maybe even a gym membership or whatever it is that you decide you like to do, it's really a cost savings in the long run. So, and again, the quality of life, I think, is just so important.
It's hard to put a price on, isn't it?
Exactly.
Thank you. So the next question I had is, how do we go about combining, and I assume we can combine Western medicine and some of the complementary medicines that we've talked about. Can you or Dr. Chen just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So from my perspective, I think just from the initial raise of hands of how many people are doing some form or participating in some form of complementary medicine is, that starts with education. And exploring what they are, and figuring out that, this might not be for me, but it might be. And I think I said from the outset that, I wasn't necessarily a true believer in all of this. But as I started to explore it, and I learned that I've suffered from insomnia since I was a little kid, and I was count sheep and all of those things, which really in some form I kind of are meditation. I've tried so many of the prescription and over-the-counter sleep medications, and you always just, I felt like garbage the next day. So I thought, well, I'm going to explore meditation and see, what is this like? And I really found it to be very beneficial for turning off my brain. I'm one of those people that I lay in bed and I think about the 14 things that I didn't get done that day and the 20 that I have to do tomorrow. And if you're focusing on something else, your brain can't focus on those other things. So it was really beneficial for me. It's not easy, I will tell you. People practice meditation for years and years and years and years. And your brain will wander. That's what it does. But it's learning how to bring it back to the present moment. So I think it's the integration of the two is really having the willingness to explore them and see which ones you might be willing to try and see if it's beneficial. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least, maybe you've tried it.
But just like a drug, I can't do meditation once and think my insomnia is cured. Just like a drug wouldn't do that. It's
exactly. It is a long stand, and sometimes it doesn't work. I have to be honest and tell you, sometimes it just doesn't work. But it's it's something that you have to work at. And
that's true for medications too.
Exactly.
So being open to try different things is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Dr. Chen, you'd mentioned you'd been at Renown for 10 years. So just tell me a little bit about integrating the two. Obviously, Renown is more probably Western traditional. I know you were there in integrative medicine. So can you just talk a little bit about integrating the two?
Yeah, absolutely, Brett. I mean, the most important thing to recognize is that they shouldn't be done in isolation. So you can do Western medicine in isolation, but you shouldn't do complementary and alternative therapies in isolation. So specifically what I mean is that they go really well together. And when I think of Western medicine, I like to think of a hammer, like the hammer in your toolbox. And I think it's very useful for some things, such as pounding nails. But I don't think it's very useful for some other things, such as turning a screw, as an example, if we're looking at a hardware analogy. And if you're trying to, I don't know, get a fly on the wall, you can use the hammer and you may eventually succeed. But of course, now your wall doesn't look so good. And so if we only have one tool, then we can't really easily solve all the problems. If we have the multiple tools, such as using complementary and alternative therapies and Western medicine together, then we can solve many more problems. So as an example, I can say to my physician, well, hey, I'd really like to lose weight. And then the physician can say, okay, well, I've got these great medications. In fact, a new one just came out that's going to cost you $1,000 a month. You want to try it? But it also may give you diarrhea, by the way, and that's okay because that's just a side effect. Don't worry too much about it, except for the fact you have to worry about it because you're the one getting diarrhea. Or you could do the complementary and alternative therapy of getting more physical activity, maybe decreasing your intake of processed foods, and that might just work just as well, or even better than taking a pharmaceutical for less expensive. And so I think that the use of all these different types of therapies is beautiful in that they mesh well together, and there's no reason to only use one of them. And so that also means there's no reason to only just use Chinese medicine. One should use everything together as opposed to separately. So I hope that makes sense. Yeah,
it most definitely does to me, at least. Are there any alternative medicines, techniques that we might come across that we should be wary of or stay away from? That's you, Dr. Chen, to begin with.
That's me. Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, it's I want you to know that every practitioner that I know of complementary and alternative techniques, they're interested in getting people better, and they have different ways of going about it. And so I would be hard pressed to say that you should stay away from one thing in specific. However, one technique that I have to figure out whether or not they're a legitimate practitioner is actually two different points. Number one, how much money they want to charge you. If they want to charge you a lot of money and lock you in for several sessions at once, I generally say no, because I'd much rather you try it once or twice and see how it helps. If it doesn't help, what's the point of continuing? So that's tip number one. Stay away from people who want to charge you way too much. Tip number two is stay away from practitioners who say that they can't hurt you. In medicine, in just about anything that's worth its salt, anything that's beneficial can also have a detriment to it. What I mean is that if it could help you, it could also hurt you, right? So I like to use the example of water. Water is great. If you don't drink it, you get thirsty and dehydrated. But you could easily imagine if you drink way too much water, you can hurt yourself. And if you expose yourself to too much water, you could drown, right? So everything that's beneficial, in order for it to be beneficial, there has to be something called a therapeutic window, which means that it's beneficial in a specific amount or a specific dose. So, and outside that dose, it can be detrimental to you. It can hurt you. So if any practitioner says, oh, this will only help you and there's no way it can hurt you, that's when you walk out the door. Hope that makes sense.
Definitely does. Thank you for explaining that in a way we can easily understand. Leslie, same question to you. Do you come across the latest thing that people come in, the fountain of youth in a pill, or things that we should be skeptical of or stay away from?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's two things. One, if it seems too good to be true, it is. I mean, that statement, if you take that pill and it's telling you that it's going to cure your diabetes or cure your peripheral neuropathy, it's probably not, worth doing. The other thing I think is making sure that you're aware of what you're purchasing is really what it says it is. And, that's another key one. Make sure that you're going to a reputable place to buy herbs or dietary supplements, that you're staying away from things that are on the internet that you just happen to see this thing pop up. I can't tell you how many people I talk to that they buy one thing and then all of a sudden they're getting phone calls or emails or all of these other things. You buy this and you get 6 bottles of that for free. That's probably a red flag that, maybe that's not such a great idea. There are independent testing laboratories that test dietary supplements. And I'm not saying just because something does not have third-party testing that it's bad. I'm just saying that is one way to make sure that the products that you're buying are good quality products. The other thing that I will just caution you on is you'll look at dietary supplements, and a lot of times they'll say that they are made using federal good manufacturing process, or I think that's what it says. Well, we would hope that, they're using a good manufacturing process. All that is saying is that they get guidance from the FDA of what their manufacturing plant should have in place as far as safety procedures and analyses of products. But there's nothing that says that they have to do it. They're guidelines. So really, when it says that, it really means nothing. I mean, nobody has checked to make sure that their floors are clean and that they don't have mold growing in their capsule, machine. It's just saying that we're following guidelines, but nobody's checking that. So I think just making sure that you're buying good quality products is really important.
So it sounds like good marketing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they can market anything.
So where can we go to get good sources of information? If we wanted to explore different complementary medicines that you've both spoken about, what are some sources that are trustworthy where we can go and learn more? Maybe Leslie, do you have some suggestions?
So the National Institutes of Health, they have a complementary and alternative medicine site. They also have an Office of Dietary Supplements. And I am no way associated with the Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital system, but they do actually have a wonderful site that is free that talks a lot about herbal products. There's both a professional part to that and one for the public. And they have really good reliable information there. There's a lot of information about using herbal products and alternative therapies in cancer treatments for managing some side effects. So that's a great website. You just really, again, have to be careful of what website that you're looking at. If they're selling you something on the website, that should just be a flag to make sure that you're really scrutinizing the information that's there.
So the first one, the National Institute of Health, and specifically for complementary medicine, is on the handouts. So on the second page of your handout, you should find that. What was the second one you mentioned?
The second one is Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital. If you just Google that and herbal products, it'll come up. And it is a great database for herbal products.
And just one more time slowly, the Memorial
Sloan Kettering Hospital.
Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Awesome. So Dr. Chen, this is weird having you out there and out in space there somewhere. So
Yeah.
what advice would you give as far as to the audience finding good, reputable information when wanting to explore alternatives? Do we have any additional ones from what Leslie said? Would you endorse those also?
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly endorse the ones that Leslie was talking about. The National Institutes of Health really has good information about all kinds of different complementary and alternative therapies. The other one that I really like is unfortunately it's a paid service, but it's called consumerlab.com. So just spelled as one might expect, consumerlab.com. And you can.
Oh, we've lost sound. So while we try to get Dr. Chen back, this consumerlab.com, Dr. Chen had told me about, should be on your handout as well on that second page.
Yep.
And I think we have Dr. Chen back.
Yep, sorry about that. Yeah, consumerlab.com. And the reason why I like them specifically is that many of you are familiar with Consumer Reports, right? So Consumer Reports is an organization that evaluates different household goods and things like that. They test cars, they test washing machines, they test irons and things like that, but they don't test herbs and supplements specifically. So consumerlab.com tests herbs and supplements specifically. And I use this tool on a daily basis so I can recommend exactly what manufacturers to use for what herbs, right? So what brand is exactly correct? Because you go to the store, you try to buy herbs and supplements, and there's 10 different supplement manufacturers. You have no idea which one works the best or which one even has the stuff that you need it to have. By the way, one more thing that I should point out. There's a lot of supplements out there that have multiple different things in them. And so you get 5 different supplements in one pill, which sounds great, except for the fact that you can have interactions between those different supplements, and any one of those supplements can interact with your medications, and any one of them can be too much or too little. So I very strongly recommend that when you buy supplements, you only get one at a time, meaning that you only get one specific ingredient at a time. So don't get something with acetyl L-carnitine and alpha lipoic acid and SAMe and CoQ10 all in one thing. It's just too much. Keep it simple, because otherwise it's very easy to get confused, and you might just confuse your body too and create interactions. So try to stick with supplements that only have one thing in them.
That's great advice. I wasn't aware of that. I hadn't thought about that.
That's a really great point. And I bought a multiple vitamin thinking, it's a multiple vitamin, not taking the time to look at the label, and then actually looked at it, and there was probably 15 different herbs in the multiple vitamin, and I thought I was just buying a multiple vitamin. So, and this, was within the last year.
So we
Absolutely.
need to be educated consumers and look what's on the labels. Obviously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And read the fine print. Bring your magnifying glass.
Great. Thank you both. So I'm sure the audience has questions for both of you, and I know you're both going to take questions. Just before we do, Alexa, could you just bring up that PowerPoint slide just for some housekeeping up the front, if you wouldn't mind? So what did I need to cover? Our next seminar is on, when is our next seminar? February the 10th? Yes, February the 10th. And our next seminar is the truth about the latest scams. So I think we did a webinar maybe 2 years ago. I can't remember if it was a webinar or in person on scams. Who attended that, just out of interest? A few people, okay. And so it seems like every 2 years, 3 years, people say, can you do scams again? So we're going to do scams in February. And the reason why we think it's so important, out of our audience and clients that we work with, Annette and I, we've had, I don't know, 4 or 5 come up to us just in the last little space of time saying they've been the victims of a scam and it's cost them thousands of dollars, thousands and thousands of dollars. And these are people we would never expect to be scammed because they're smart, just like all of you. But the scammers are getting so good with the stories they tell. I'm not talking about the fake emails and so forth. Various other things that scammers are doing now that are taking advantage of us, irrespective of our age. But for whatever reason, they feel that they have more success going after seniors. So I think it's really important to attend that. And we're going to have the Attorney General's office here, a couple of speakers from the Attorney General's office. The Better Business Bureau will also, because they come across scams all the time. And I'm also working on having the Nevada Consumer Affairs Department participate. And I was also given a possible lead into having the FBI, because the FBI will obviously also deal with a lot of scams. We don't have them here in Reno, but they're in Las Vegas. So I'm hoping to maybe get a panelist from there. So if you would like to attend the scam seminar next month on February the 10th, on your yellow evaluation form, to make it easy, there's a section there where you can just check the box and we'll get you registered for that seminar. And then we also have 2 workshops coming up. Are they on the slide? Yeah. So on January the 27th, Rich Schultz is going to do a workshop at our office for anyone who would like to attend. And can we give a microphone? Oh, you've got a microphone, Rich. In 30 seconds or less, Rich, could you just tell us what you're going to talk about?
I'm a lawyer. Don't go 30 seconds or less. No.
I told you we'd be here at 3 o'clock.
Yeah. So I'm talking about elder law and preserving your dignity. And I'm listening to the speakers today, which is, both of you are fantastic. All of us have very strong feelings about our health and where we want to be. And I think, summarizing kind of what I'm hearing from y'all is that the alternative and complementary medicine requires you to think about what you want. Like if we were to all go through and say, in 5 years, I want to be healthier and better off than I am today. But you've actually got what I'm hearing is that if you think about it, you put some effort into it, there's options other than traditional medicine that'll get you there and keep you there. And that's kind of what I'm talking about in the workshop. If I were to talk to all of you, when you get to a point where you get sick, and by that, I mean either physically where you can't make healthcare decisions for yourself, or cognitively where you're physically doing well, but your brain's not working as well as you'd like it to. We all have very strong opinions, feelings, thoughts about what we want, what we don't want, how we want to be treated, who we want involved, all of that stuff. And very frequently, we just don't talk about it. And so the workshop's actually a chance to come in and talk about that, how to control your healthcare at that stage in your life, who's involved in your decision-making, what kind of instructions you want to leave, how to make that binding. And also taking a look at what you've already done, which may be enough, right? Lots of you have already done planning. You may be where you want to be, but let's take a look and see if it actually does what you think it does as well.
Great, thank you so much, Rich. And for those who don't know, that's Rich Schultz from the Schultz Law Group. And Rich has been an education partner with us for a number of years. He happens to be our personal attorney, and we think the world of Rich. So yeah, he never sends anyone in the wrong direction. And I know several of you in here also use Rich. So on, again, your yellow evaluation form, if you'd like to attend that workshop, it's at our office. I think the directions are on the evaluation form. We'll reach out and call and confirm and make sure you know where you're going. And then on February the 17th, Tom McDonald, another education partner here from Omaha of Mutual, who's going to do a workshop on the ins and outs of reverse mortgages. And I'll have Tom talk about that next month, but that is for in February, if that is of interest. So any other housekeeping before we jump to questions? Yeah, so do mic runners. Oh, okay, thank you so much. So do I have mic runners? Debbie Wood. So Debbie Wood is with Flagstar Mortgage. Debbie is one of our education partners. She's going to run the mic for this half of the room. And then over on this side, Debbie does reverse mortgages and regular mortgages. Yes. And then on this side of the room, I have Vic De Nigris. Does anyone know which organization Vic is from? First one to call it out? Amada. Amada. Who said that? Robert. I'm going to have a gift card for you, Robert. So Vic is with Amada Senior Care, who provide in-home care, and he's going to do the mic running on this side of the audience. On my right. So if you have a question you'd like to ask of Leslie or Dr. Chen, please put up your hand and we'll come over to you. No questions? You guys did such a fantastic job. Over on this side. And we'll just alternate.
Leslie, in the beginning,
Yes.
you mentioned that, oh, okay, thanks. You mentioned that none of this is being taught in medical school, correct?
I mean, I think things are changing, and I'm speaking more specifically for pharmacy school, that when I get these students, I ask them, you know, what have you guys learned about dietary supplements and herbal things? And it's, you know, tiny bit. And I think the same is true. Medical schools, I think, are getting better, but, you know, from what I have, heard from people that are in medical school now, it's pretty slim what they learn.
Well, isn't it slim because or correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't the pharmaceutical industry endow all the medical schools? Am I right on that?
No,
Some of
not that
that-
I'm aware of. No. I mean, there are, you know, yeah. Dr. Chen, maybe you can just speak to that about the medical school, since you're doing some teaching in there right now.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. You know, sometimes I wish that the pharmaceutical industry would pay me, but unfortunately, they don't. But then again, maybe it's because I don't like giving out pharmaceuticals, so maybe that's why they don't want to pay me. You know, what's interesting is that the funding of medical schools has everything to do actually with Medicare and Medicaid. And in the plan for Medicare and Medicaid, they actually fund the medical schools at the same time. I actually wish they would fund more medical schools, because there's certainly not enough physicians out there, unfortunately. In terms of education, yeah, I think there's certainly some medical students who are very interested. Over at the university, medical school, we have a group called the Holistic and Preventative Special Interest Group for med students, and I give those guys lectures about once every other month or so on complementary and alternative therapies. I'm certainly not the only one in the country, but most medical schools don't have really time to add on a complementary and alternative therapy branch, because it's a whole different way of looking at medicine, truthfully, and it would be a lot to get them to understand these things. And so, unfortunately, you guys are right. Not a lot of education out there.
Thank you. Yes, please go ahead.
This isn't actually a question. It's a whole subject that I didn't hear talked about, and that was illegal alternative medicine in this country. There are some things that are considered illegal in certain states and not in other states. And so I have clients that go from Nevada to Oregon to get treatments for arthritis because they can't get it here. They can't get it in California. So I think that interferes with alternative medicine. So there's a lot of it that just isn't legal in all the states. And what controls that? And why is that happening? Because people are benefiting from it.
Thank you. Did you have any comments on that, Leslie or Dr. Chen? Differences between states in terms of complementary medicine?
I don't.
Not aware of.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
I can add a little bit. Certainly some of the things that are illegal right now are the psychedelics, psychedelic medications or psychedelic drugs such as, I don't know, acid or LSD or ecstasy, otherwise known as, oh heck, I forget the other name, sorry. But, and even mushrooms, psilocybin or magic mushrooms, I can say. A lot of those are currently illegal in most places except for Oregon and I think somewhere in like Washington, D.C. So it's a little bit difficult because Western medicine is having to deal with its kind of thought that all these substances have no benefits, and we're slowly finding out that there are benefits to things. And certainly some states have a lot of regulations requiring against other things such as assisted suicide or physician-assisted death. So there's certainly some things that are illegal. I have to say that there's some other things that are also illegal or at least not shown to have a whole lot of benefit. So as an example, something like a layer trial for cancer. So some things are illegal for good reason. Some things are illegal because we're stuck in the dark ages about thinking about them. And other things are, our state governments haven't gotten around to fixing yet. So unfortunately, you're right. Some things that could be beneficial are still illegal.
Thank you for those insights, helping us better understand why it's different. Over here, Debbie, if you wouldn't mind.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, this is a question for both Leslie and Dr. Chen, and it's related to the fact that medical schools are just not addressing complementary or alternative medicine. And my question has to do with why are health insurance plans not covering more or most of alternative ways of addressing medical care?
I told you our audience only has easy questions. Good luck.
So I think at least from the pharmaceutical side, I mean, you will certainly see insurance companies won't pay for, certain prescription medications too. From the other side of it, from the complementary side, my impression is that the insurance companies utilize, there's got to be evidence that it is proven that this is beneficial, so it's not considered experimental. And unfortunately, a lot of our complementary therapies don't have, what we call evidence-based information to support them. And that's not saying that they aren't effective. It's just saying that it hasn't been studied to show that, there's a benefit. So the insurance company right there can say, well, it's not, not proven as being evidence-based, that it's beneficial, so we're not going to cover it.
I think I just heard lots of people in the audience say no money. So yeah.
Right. It's kind of back to Dr. Chen's great example of chamomile. I mean, it's, they're not going to, can't patent that. So there's no money there.
So hence not the
not the research exactly to show it's beneficial. Mm-hmm.
Dr. Chen, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I unfortunately may have a lot to say about this particular topic. Let's start with one very interesting tidbit. About 10 years ago or so, one of our local healthcare plans, Senior Care Plus, which is a division of Hometown Health, used to cover acupuncture, and then they stopped covering acupuncture. And so being an acupuncture practitioner, I said, why did you stop covering acupuncture? And they said, well, Dr. Chen, your acupuncture keeps people from using our services. I said, well, that sounds great. And they said, no, if they don't use our services, then we don't make any money. Well, that was a little bit disappointing. So it means that part of it is there's a financial incentive for the insurance companies to make sure that you take their medications or to get hospitalized. And I don't mean to sound like a conspiracy therapist. It's really because they said this directly to me. So that's a little bit unfortunate. It's kind of the way that the medical industrial complex works at this particular point. So they won't, there's many insurance companies that won't cover it. In fact, actually, I'm very thankful that they don't cover things like acupuncture, though there is a movement in Congress to make that happen. And the reason why I'm thankful that they don't cover acupuncture and things like that is because then, well, I'd have to see a patient every 15 minutes. And then I'd only be able to treat for specific indications, such as low back pain, which I think is just too limiting and it's no good for the patient. So in some ways, I'm very thankful insurance companies don't want to cover it. I had something else to say about this topic. but I just forgot. So maybe I'll remember in a few minutes. All right, that's enough.
We'll come back to you. I'm sure.
Thanks.
We'll take another question over here.
Yes, your doctor, your DO, doctor of osteopathy, how does the training differ in their attitude towards a patient?
Dr. Chen or you, Leslie? Dr. Chen, you want to take that one?
Sure, I'll be happy to take it. So a doctor of osteopathy, let's start from the big picture. The doctor of osteopathy in the United States is a fully licensed physician. So everything an MD can do, a DO can do. And so I would trust them no less. If I was in emergency, I'd trust a doctor of osteopathy with my life. Their training is that they have additional additional education in school about kind of different ways to manipulate the physical body to improve health. And they have a little bit more of a holistic way of looking at things. And so you find most doctors of osteopathy, they tend to be primary care physicians rather than specialists because they like to treat the entire body as opposed to anything else. Most of my doctor of osteopathy colleagues, unfortunately, don't practice much manipulation these days. There's just not a lot of time. But if I had to choose a doctor, I would probably choose a doctor of osteopathy over an MD just because they have a slightly broader view of health.
Thank
Hope
you.
that
That's
makes
very
sense.
insightful.
Sure.
Great explanation. Thank you. Now let's take a question from over here.
Hi. Dr. Chen, can you tell us a few of the stores or locations in Reno Sparks area that we could rely on for getting good herbs or alternatives?
As long as it's okay with Brett, I'll be happy to broach the topic. Yeah, okay, sure. So one of my favorite herb stores that's been around for a long time is Truckee Meadow Herbs. And it's on the corner of Wells and Vassar. Part of the reason why I like them is because they've been around for decades and they've got a few different herbalists on staff. The guy who owns it, his name's Tom, I forget Tom's last name, but Tom is also an herbalist. And so when I send my patients to that store, I know for sure that Tom or his colleagues are going to give people exactly the right thing. Other places that you can get herbs, in Sparks, there's a place called the Herb Lady, which can be beneficial. She has lots of good information as well. There's another one in Reno that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but it's in the kind of Sports West complex. And then for local grocery stores, I generally send people to natural grocers only because they're less expensive and just the same quality as Whole Foods. If you got nowhere else to go to Whole Foods. But if you're in Reno, please consider going to natural grocers. The other reason why I like them is hilariously, there's very few people in there usually. So if you're worried about risk of coronavirus or things like that, it's kind of nice because there's nobody there. Anyway.
Thank you. Great information.
Sure.
Natural grocers, is that over by in Reno, Kitski and TJ Maxx?
Right, exactly.
Yep. Sam's Club, yeah, over in there. Thank you.
Right there.
Do we have a question over here? Yes, please.
Yeah, Dr. Chen, I think we all thank you very much for your attendance here, even though you're virtual and you're zooming in with us. If I heard you correctly earlier, you came down with COVID on Monday and here you are on Thursday. From my standpoint, looking good, sounding good. I'm curious to know, what are you using for your therapeutics?
Well, I appreciate the I appreciate the kudos here. I think luckily I got infected with Omicron, so it's and I've been vaccinated ×3, so the 2 normal ones plus the booster. So I think that's probably the reason why I'm still, talking and not too messed up. In terms of COVID therapies, truthfully, there's not a whole lot out there that's going to be beneficial. In terms of alternative therapies, I would highly recommend that you make sure your vitamin D levels are adequate. And what else? There's a Western herb called Andrographis, Andrographis. So lots of different doses. This is one of the ones I'd recommend that if you're going to try this one, go talk to Tom or his colleagues over at Truckee Meadow Herbs. And of course, there's a whole host of Chinese medications as well, but I'll not confuse you with the Chinese names. So.
Thank you. We had a question over here. Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm wondering why you didn't discuss, or could you discuss CBD and how it would relate to health without some of the side effects, and then also organic nutrition. I realize it probably does not have pesticides on it, but is there any other reason to go totally organic?
Great question. Who would like to start? And actually, for those who are interested about cannabis, I don't know why we didn't cover it today, but Leslie, you did a webinar with myself and one of the owners of one of the local cannabis places. It was super educational. We recorded it. So if you go to the Retired Living Truth series past seminars, you'll actually find the recording of that. And it was very, very informative. But
yeah. So CBD is an interesting topic. I think, well, one of the first things that I'll say is back to buying, making sure that you're getting a good product. If you Google buying CBD oil or look on Amazon, you'll get a whole list of things, but what they actually have in them are hemp oil, not CBD. Hemp oil comes from a different part of the plant, and there may be some medicinal purposes to it, but it's not giving you what you're thinking when you're looking at CBD. So that's one of the first things, is to make sure that you're actually getting CBD and not hemp oil. Again, back to what I think you had mentioned, these substances are illegal in certain states, legal in others. And there are actually some prescription, 2 prescription products that are pure CBD and they're actually only indicated for treating seizures in children. And that's really where we have data from. We don't have good data to know about CBD and the side effects and, a lot of the drug interactions and things like that, because it's not legal in every state. So there's no federal funding for research for it. The University of Los Angeles, University of California, Los Angeles, I think has a CBD and THC, so marijuana, cannabis research center for it. But we just don't have a lot of good information. And I think that's really the biggest part to that is we don't know. I mean, there's a lot of hearsay as to it being beneficial, but I just can't, I think that's just the biggest problem. We just don't really know.
Thank you,
You're
Leslie.
welcome.
And I think you mentioned when we did that webinar too, even if it is on Amazon or wherever this has CBD, just the concentration, sometimes it's like 0.0001 so that they can say it has it, but it's not going to do you anything.
Exactly. And then again, goes back to making sure you're buying, good, reliable products, that what they say is in there is really in there.
Can you say anything about hemp oil?
I think hemp oil is great for moisturizing your skin. Not going to do anything for pain if you're using it topically.
Dr. Chen, did you want to jump in on this as far as CBD, cannabis, benefits, no benefits, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, I remember what I was talking about, and it directly ties in here. There's a whole lot more research than one actually thinks is out there. And I'll say specifically about acupuncture, there's more research than anything else on acupuncture at this point, really good research. And so when a primary care doc or a specialist says there's not any research, I don't know if I'd necessarily believe them. 10 years ago or 20 years ago, there wasn't that much research, but there's a lot of developing research on these things. CBD, on the other hand, is a little bit of a bit of a hole, meaning that because marijuana has been illegal for such a long time, the number of studies is still very low, unfortunately. And I certainly have patients who have benefited from CBD in terms of their pain specifically, or sometimes other symptoms. Again, I point you to consumerlab.com if you're looking for exactly the stuff that has the right stuff, I guess you could put it that way. It is very, very confusing because it's kind of like the Wild West out there with CBD and THC supplements. So that's all.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question.
Can we just talk about oral versus topical on the CBD?
Sorry, if you could just speak into the microphone. So
Can we just discuss the use of CBD orally or topically? Seems to be a problem.
Yeah, so topical CBD, I mean, you don't have a lot of absorption into, the bloodstream. You get some, but it's pretty minimal. So really adverse effects and drug interactions using topical products just as a whole are significantly less. I mean, it's not something that I get too worked up about. It's the oral when you're ingesting and it's getting into the systemic system, getting into your blood and your brain and all of that, that we just need to make sure that we're not creating more problems than we're trying to solve. Does that answer your question? I think that's, so his question was, is it beneficial topically? And I will say that there are people that say it is very, very beneficial. And there's a lot that say it didn't do anything for me. Now the question, did they really get topical CBD, or did they get what they thought was, but it was really hemp oil?
Or a placebo effect.
Or the placebo effect. Exactly. Yep. If you believe it's going to work, there's a much better chance that it's going to work.
thank you. We have time for one more question. If there's one last question anyone has, down here to Ricky. Did we hand out magnet schedules as people came in? Yeah, so if you'd like a schedule and you didn't see, we have magnet versions of the schedules to stick on the refrigerator. Yeah, we're good. Excellent, thank you. Go ahead, Ricky.
I have a question on low dose naltroxon, because that's seems to be a medication that's being used more by MDs or DOs. And I don't know anything about it. And either one of you could talk about it. I wonder if it's a CBD.
No, it's
Could you repeat what it is that we're talking about?
So naltrexone, low dose naltrexone that they're utilizing for pain. It is not CBD. I think that we have learned so much from the opioid crisis and the things that happened with that. And I think that pain management is a fantastic opportunity for complementary and alternative medicine. So naltrexone is something that they're utilizing more for pain treatments, but it is not CBD.
So that brings us up almost to 11:30. Can we just show our gratitude for Leslie and Dr. Chen for making this happen?